Good morning, Dr. Binder. This is Al Suleiman, Director of Prevention and Risk Management with the Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management, for the record. I will just be making a brief statement, and then we'll turn over the presentation to my colleague, Dave Nodwell. So first, let me say that I am very pleased to be attending my first Commission meeting in my capacity as Director, responsible for the nuclear file in Ontario, since the integration of the Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management Ontario. As I mentioned, I'm joined by my Program Manager, Dave Nodwell, and of course, you've already met Deputy Chief Tom Contra on the phone, and you're well acquainted with both David Nodwell and Deputy Chief Tom Contra, and they are my subject matter experts on all things nuclear. I would like to thank the Commission for this opportunity to update you on the progress being made with respect to the distribution of KI pills in Ontario's nuclear jurisdiction. Much of what you hear today was already communicated to you, Dr. Binder, in the letter from Fire Marshal and Chief Ted Winslavik in his letter of March 9th, 2015. And some of what we will cover in our presentation was also covered in Mr. Seguin's presentation. As you will appreciate, KI distribution is a multi-jurisdictional effort, and I would like to commend the tremendous efforts, resources, and commitment of our nuclear facilities, nuclear municipalities, specifically Durham Region, Toronto, Kincardine, and Deep River Laurentian Hills, as well as Ontario's Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to this important initiative. Of course, we all know that mass distribution of KI is not simply a matter of putting pills in an envelope and mailing them. There are numerous considerations and issues to manage, from product integrity to ensuring that recipients don't just discard the pills unwanted in the trash, which is why we've put significant efforts towards public education. Effectiveness and sustainability are key to the success of the program. As you will see in our presentation, the OFMEM and partners are committed to building a KI distribution program that is effective and sustainable, and that meets the requirements of Reg Doc 210.1. I will now pass off to Dave Nodwell to walk us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dave Nodwell, Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management, for the record. If I could have the next slide, please. I will be discussing over the next couple of minutes, providing some provincial context to the subject of KI. I'll talk about the KI distribution working group, who it's comprised of and how it's structured, take a look at accomplishments to date, some of the issues and concerns, and then finally conclusion with an opportunity for questions. If I could have the next slide, please. So as you're aware, KI is governed by the Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan in terms of how it's applied in a nuclear emergency. It details the off-site nuclear emergency management responsibilities which fall under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, including those for potassium iodide. The PNR discusses the implementation or that the KI pill distribution is ultimately a municipal responsibility, and that providing resources to facilitate that distribution is the responsibility of the respective nuclear facility. In an emergency, administering KI pills is at the direction of the Provincial Chief Medical Officer of Health, under the Radiation Health Response Plan. If I could have the next slide, please. Within the context of the PNR, KI is one of many potential protective measures that would be utilized. The strategy employed in the PNR is that evacuation would be the preferred protective measure that would be implemented. Iodine thyroid blocking would be undertaken only in conjunction with either evacuation or sheltering. And of course, as has been discussed many times, the pre-distribution of KI pills is most critical in an immediate emission scenario. Next slide, please. The Radiation Health Response Plan provides guidelines for KI, and they include such information as procurement, stocking, and distribution. Specifically, the plan deals with things such as what information should be provided with the tablets, advice on distribution strategies and public education, and recommended locations of KI stocks. And it talks about the functions during the planning and response phases related to KI. The document also addresses, through the KI guidelines, the risks and other concerns associated with KI. So, for example, newborns and pregnant women who need to be dealt with somewhat differently, the risk of hypothyroidism for the newborn, and the use of KI for persons over the age of 40. Clinical conditions that contraindicate administration of KI are also included. The next slide, please. The Provincial KI Distribution Working Group was first assembled in June of 2013, and it was designed to enhance the existing distribution methods that were already implemented, and included distribution to institutions, schools, and so forth, and in the case of Durham Region in particular, to the public through pharmacies on a voluntary basis. So the intent was to enhance this strategy and build it into something more effective. This working group continues its work with the further mandate to align the KI strategy with the newly published CNSC Reg Doc 2.10.1. The working group is focusing its efforts on a provincial distribution strategy, recognizing that the actual distribution methods are the responsibility of local municipalities and subject to local variation, given the different needs that exist between nuclear jurisdictions. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the working group that we have established. It's chaired by the Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management. Includes municipal representatives from Durham, the City of Toronto, Kincardine, Deep River and Laurentian Hills, and the town of Amherstburg. We have as well representatives from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission who participate in these meetings. The facilities themselves, Ontario Power Generation, Bruce Power, and AECL. And we're provided with support from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care Emergency Management Branch. If I could have the next slide, please. So we have two subgroups that work under this working group. One is dealing specifically with distribution, the other public education. So in terms of the distribution working group, some of the key accomplishments to date include the definition of primary zone and secondary zone distribution principles in order to meet the requirement under Reg Doc 210.1. We have defined the required number of pills for each nuclear area's primary and secondary zone to facilitate the procurement process, which in some cases is a substantial number of pills. Currently, discussions are underway detailing the specifics of the primary zone and secondary zone distribution mechanisms, and these include dealing with organizations such as the Ontario Pharmacy Association, the Ontario Government Pharmacy, and looking at a number of mass distribution options that would include potentially mail coupons or door-to-door distribution. I'll point out specifically with respect to the secondary zone that the target population within that zone is in fact children under the age of 18, pregnant women, and breastfeeding women. However, I'd point out as well that a part of that includes making sure that it's available to any member of the population in the secondary zone that would desire to have KI in their possession. Next slide, please. With respect to public education, there has been a commitment made on the part of the Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management to develop a comprehensive and centralized nuclear website which will include detailed information on KI, but of course it could be much broader in scope than just the KI. There is ongoing work in the creation of a toolbox of communication products to support KI pill distribution efforts in all nuclear areas. So this would provide a provincial level of consistency in terms of the look and feel of the documents that are being used, and would include such things as fact sheets, FAQs, and a variety of social media products. Part of the effort as well has been to develop consistent wording for KI pill packaging across nuclear jurisdictions. So what we will see distributed in the Bruce area will be very similar to what would be seen in the areas of Chalk River and Durham region. To help inform and support this work, there have been a number of focus groups and surveys that have been held in Bowmanville and Ajax, and other work to determine public perceptions and public needs related to both the KI pills and KI education. A draft communication strategy is being developed as well that would look at things such as radio and newspaper advertising, targeted online advertising, earned media, social media, and so forth. So this would be a lot of this occurring prior to the distribution of actual KI pills so that people know what it is that they're receiving and why. If I could have the next slide, please. So I would like to make you aware of some of the issues that we are facing and some of the challenges that we have on our path towards the implementation of KI pre-distribution. While there's been no information to date that discoloration causes instability in the pills, we have yet to confirm that it does not. And this has arisen from some existing pills that have a very discolored look to them, and we're very concerned that does not reflect instability in the actual pills or reduced efficacy. So we're in the process of determining that. There have been issues raised by pharmacies that we're currently dealing with, how they will be identified, for example, or identified should there be a problem with the pills, and how the compensation element would work for the distribution and consultation that would be associated with that. Part and parcel with the provincial position is that the credibility of the source of distribution needs to be verifiable. And consequently, there have been many discussions and concern related to some of the mass distribution options. It would appear to meet the timelines that mass distribution will be required, specifically in the Durham and Toronto areas. And we need to ensure that as far as possible, misuse and tampering is not a threat, and that members of the public would not disregard or discard the pills due to mistrust resulting from receiving them in the mail. Despite despite serious reservations about this, and as noted, there would be a strong public education campaign precede the distribution of these pills, and partners are and have committed to the development of a longer-term, effective and sustainable strategy that would involve the use of a credible source. So these issues have been resolved and are currently being worked on at the working group level. If I could have the next slide, please. In conclusion, the province and its many partners continue to work diligently to develop and implement materials and strategies to facilitate local KI pill distribution. This work is being undertaken in accordance with the provincial position on KI distribution, and this has been confirmed in correspondence to the CNSC, and specifically is suggesting that KI distribution to the public be accomplished using pharmacists, medical doctors, or other credible sources. However, also consistent with the requirements of Reg Doc 210.1. In conclusion, as mentioned, we are working diligently to meet the requirements of 210.1, and will continue to update the Commission throughout the year so that you're apprised of the progress that is being made. And that concludes our presentation. I would welcome the opportunity for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.